Hey guys, welcome back to the channel where we review anything and everything. And today we are getting into this is the Jurassic World. Let me see. This is the Jurassic World Epic Roaring Tyrannosaurus Rex. And luckily I happen to have the box on hand. So let me try to angle this a little bit better that I can get a little bit more of a view of the whole thing. So hold on. Okay. So nice box art. I'm not going to dive into this too much, but you got this thing sticking out, which looks cool, and the features. And how if you hold it, it says a little clock saying if you hold the button, the longer the effect goes on for the roar. This actually, even though I'm doing this review after the Stomp and Escape one, this one came out before it, and this one kind of really set the grounds for, you can pause the video and read some of the details on here. This really set the grounds for where Mattel was going to take it in terms of like their best T-Rex, where they kind of like, you could say, set a new standard. The detail is really nice. It had more of a matte finish. The detail is very nice. It has two different effects going on, and I'll show you those, and we'll jump right into that. And essentially, what it had as far as its features was, you have this kind of puppeteer effect where you can move the head, and it has a very wide array of like motion to it. So it almost feels like it's literally the animatronic T-Rex in the movie, even though this one is actually from Camp Cretaceous, Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous, the cartoon. You have the movement of the head, which looks nice. And then you have the epic roar, which you can just do a quick bite and it makes the sound, or you can hold it and it goes into that kind of long roar. Now, jumping into the detail of this one, being that this was the first one of this kind of new wave of detail and whatnot, it has a matte finish, more of a matte finish. It's semi-glossy, but more of a matte finish than some of the ones that come later. The detail, a little detail in the scooter is very detailed. I will also point out that compared to the Stomp and Escape one, which in that review, I mentioned how that one had a little more glossy finish and actually had a little bit, I'm not gonna say less detail, but I almost feel like, sorry about that. I almost feel like because it had like this, a softer detail job on it. So the detail's there, but it's almost like a softer kind of details on it. Like it's not as like finely cut like it gives for, it makes it feel almost like, I don't want to say less detailed, even though some people just simply say, yeah, it's less detailed. But I would say it's more of a softer, kind of almost like in photography when you say a softer image. It's softer in terms of the detail. But I almost feel like also that kind of may protect it to a degree from, any kind of damage necessarily, because it feels like a more smoother kind of coating. Well, this is a little bit more matte. But it's definitely nice. This was the first one to introduce the rubber teeth, which is very nice because one, it just makes the teeth look better. You got a bone color. They're separated, so you don't have to worry about paint wear, which is definitely a big problem when it comes to a lot of the T-Rexes, because, or any dinosaurs in general, because when you have your kids biting them on things and stuff like that, it's going to wear. Also, you have this thing introduced, this very real tongue, which is funny because they carried the same tongue over into the Hammond Collection one, and I think it's amazing. It looks really good. Sometimes you have other tongues that are not bad, they're rubber, but they don't have high detail in them, and they're nice, and there's nothing wrong with them. This one took it to a whole nother level, and I just think that was so impressive that they did that. And I'm surprised they didn't continue that on other ones, but like I said, they used this one to set the bar, so there's a lot of features in this one and detail in this one that sometime, even though they made other ones later on, didn't necessarily get replicated. And because this one just kind of really set the bar high. For example, once again, if you're looking at, if I can get this on screen, if you're looking at this is the Stomp and Escape, you see the tongue, and this one is just flat. Now, the positive thing with this one is, I'm going to take my O1 figure as a reference. With this one, you can fit him all the way in it. Not that he has a swallow feature, but you can fit him all the way in it. And it's like, okay, he just got, let me try to move him over. All these T-Rexes take up so much room. And he's just got eaten up. Now, with the Stomp and Escape, with the Epic Roaring, that tongue, it's a little harder to do that, but you still could do it. But you kind of could see how where the other T-Rex and many other T-Rexes don't have that kind of tongue, you know, you see it works, even though it makes it easier for a kid playing around him to not worry about it getting damaged. I'm sure if a kid was playing rough with this toy, eventually that tongue probably might get destroyed, but it feels a nice rubber feel. You still can swallow, put figures in the mouth. The detail is amazing on the tongue. Look at that. Detail. They have the same amount of detail on the bottom of it. I don't know if you're really able to see that, but on the bottom of it too. It's really nice. You know, you got the little side muscles of the jaw muscles here, and the way they work looks nice too. There's the details amazing, and to know that this one was the first one to be like that, setting the tone for that was like amazing. The nails on the feet are painted like always. A lot of detail on the feet too, which sets the tone for all the later figures. This one actually has a bigger battery area than the Stomp and Escape and many other ones. So that's why, because this one has this really loud roar. So it's like you got to have more power. And I noticed that it has a more beefier stomach area than the Stomp and Escape. And I'll bring the Stomp and Escape later on for you to just kind of see the side by side. But it's a little more beefier in the stomach, which is fine. It gives it a more that hefty, bulky aspect to it. Detail on the neck, it's cool. You got this kind of little like skin flap, which helps it like to move side to side, which is great. You know, you don't really notice it as being an issue. Like I said, I love that kind of articulation. It really just feels like it's alive to a degree. The one thing I'm going to point out negative, and it's not a huge negative, but this one was based off the Camp Cretaceous cartoon. And so this one's eyes to me look a little more cartoony than the eyes of the Stomp and Escape, which seemed to me to be a little more like the movie, in my opinion. You look at these eyes, they have like just a deep, you know, just kind of like focused animal eyes versus, it's a small difference, but the Stomp and Escape's eyes to me look more like a human's eyes. Like it's got personality in them. He has that look like, I want to come get you. I'm angry at you. I know who you are. I got a personality. So that to me is a little bit of a flaw in that regard. His paint job though is a little more like the original T-Rex, which all the T-Rexes are based off the original T-Rex, but yet sometimes they have different paint schemes on them. He has the scarring on them, which the the Stomp and Escape has that same scars on him too. He's got scars right here, a little bit on the stomach. The paint job on this one, surprisingly enough, goes off the tail, which the other one didn't, and doesn't go all the way to the end, but it extends a lot longer, which is, like I said, this particular one set the bar very high in terms of just being very impressive with what they gave you. So it has ratcheting joints in the legs as far as when it has its pose, and I like that because, you know, you don't want your figure to end up getting loose over time and then it can't stand. Now this is its, I want to say, it's more natural pose, and in this one you could see, compared to the Stomp and Escape, the Stomp and Escape, like I mentioned before, is a little more like straight across in its angle, not completely, but a little bit more in its natural pose, while the Epic Roaring is a little more angled, where the tail comes a lot lower. You see the base of the tail versus the height of the head. So I personally, you know, like keeping him in that stance. You have like a little like ratchet in that pose, so like a ratcheting, so that way it kind of, you know, locks into that pose. I like this angle. Now granted, it looks more like he's hunting at this point and sniffing around to the ground, but it's cool. You have the option to hold them up high or hold them up kind of low. But you know, I like this pose, even though it does make it now where the tail's a little too elevated. But yes, but I'm going to put him back to the original pose because we're going to get into measurement in a moment. But before we do, let's put the Owen next to him for scale. Owen is a 3 3/4 inch figure, which sets the scale of, let me get him so we see his full tail. Where you get the scale of a 3 3/4 inch is the size of the line. Now, as I mentioned in a previous video, in the other review of the Stomp and Escape, I like the scaling of this line of Mattel's, 3 3/4 inch. We're going to say that is the reference of the scale. I like the 3 3/4 inch scale of their T-Rexes. The head of the T-Rex is considered a little long, a little over exaggerated in its length, but it's fine because sometimes toys need to create the illusion of certain things being more exaggerated to fit a more fun scale for play and a more fun scale to our visual eyes, because we lock on to parts like the head, we lock onto parts like the feet, especially when we want it to stand, where the old previous T-Rex from 93, the Red Rex, the feet were too small to actually stand. So these are things that, even though they're out of proportion, visually to our eyes, we don't notice that it looks out of proportion. And I'm going to go into that by saying to you that if he is a 6 foot person, generally speaking, 6 foot, I like to use that as the measuring scale for these figures. A T-Rex's skull is supposed to be about 5 feet, give or take a couple inches, 5 feet. You can see here that if he's a 6 foot guy, the head of the T-Rex is 6 feet. So it makes it a little bit big. But with that being said, like I said, you don't really notice these little details. It still plays well. It feels natural. It feels right. So I don't knock it for that. Like I mentioned before, if I forgot to mention, he doesn't have paint on the nails, which the later one has, the Stomp and Escape. But then the later ones that came after that don't have the paint on the nails. So I don't knock anyone that came afterwards for not having, because, or him not having, because after that one, they never got him back again. But anyway, I do knock them all for just not having it, because they all should have it, but they don't. So let's see, anything else I'm going to jump into? Yep, I'm just going to jump right in now to the scaling. So I did the math on the other review with the Stomp and Escape, which I did first, but I'm just going to shorthand it this time and say the scaling that this equates to is a 19.2 scaling if this character was 6 feet. And then I use that scaling for the entire rest of the line, because it's just easier to use the human as the base scaling, which in most dinosaur books, they'll say scaling is of a 6 foot man. So we're going to assume all the regular sized men are 6 feet, regardless if they're not, and say 3.75 is 3 3/4 is 6 feet. So with that scaling, you get 19.2. So I want to keep him inside this pose, so that way he's at his almost upright for the height. And as I measure him out here, he's roughly about, seems like he's coming out to be, from my eyes, about 20, a little bit more than 20 and a half. But we're just going to round him off to say 21 because it's easier, and that was the length of the Stomp and Escape, even though on the box I think they said it was 21 and a half, which is not the case. Height wise, because in this form right here, he's 8.5 in this pose. I mean, not form. He's about 8.5 inches high, so a little bit taller in this stance than the Stomp and Escape. So with that, we're going to do the math right on the calculator here, and I'll show you guys because I like for you guys to be able to see this. So at 21, which we kind of rounded them off, he might be a little bit less than that, but we're going to give him 21. 21 times 19.2 equals, divided by 12 for the 12 inches going into the feet. He's 33.6 feet, roughly 33 and a half feet. And his height, being that he's actually a little bit taller than the Stomp and Escape, we got him at 8.5 because of the stance, really, but that's his natural stance of this toy. So 8.5 times 19.2 equals, divided by 12, and he is 13.6 feet, which is kind of cool because the Stomp and Escape came up to 12.8, so he's 13.6, so roughly like 13 0.6 feet is what he is, or 13, almost like 13 and a half feet, you could say, if you would just want to say it in general term. And yeah, so sometimes you see things that depict, and I used to always wonder too, what do they measure the T-Rex's height off of? Because you see things that say, oh, they're 16 feet tall. Are they measuring from the hips? Are they measuring from the head? I don't know. I'm measuring from the highest point just so we can get our T-Rex to be as tall as we can get them. But sometimes they measure from the hips and stuff like that. In that case, he's probably closer to like, I don't know, if that's like the equivalent of 13 and a half feet, he's probably like maybe 11 feet tall at the hips or something like that. So whatever. But I like the way the scaling looks. You can see it looks nice visually, even if the numbers don't add up to exactly the full length of, what the T-Rex would be in full height. But just to let you know, little reference, the Hammond Collection T-Rex is 25 inches long, which when you do the math equates to 40 feet long. So it is lengthwise a little more in scale with the T-Rex from the movie. Just a little tidbit. Now, I actually bought this T-Rex. Obviously, there's an older T-Rex, and I bought it not that long ago, actually. And the reason why I bought it is because I wanted to have a general T-Rex for my own collection. This one was not for my kids, and this was just because I wanted one for myself to match up in line with another review I'm going to do in a few in regards to the Legacy Jurassic World Legacy T-Rex Escape set, because that one's T-Rex was a little small and I wanted one that was a little bigger to represent a better scale. And I'll introduce this one in that other video to kind of show that scope and what I was getting into. But I really like this one. So if a person said they want to have just one T-Rex in their line, just as a collector, you don't have room. Sorry about that. If you don't have room for to have a full collection of T-Rexes, you can't have like all the T-Rexes inside the line. I love the, and I said I was going to do this one next to it. That's just a little kind of comparison. Not that I can get a good angle with both of them and whatnot. So I will put him behind him and jump back into my thought in a moment. If you could only have, one T-Rex to collect, I personally, everyone will say the Hammond Collection. That's fine if that's your thing. Personally, me, I don't like a lot of articulation because I don't want things to get loose. It could be even though I would say that there's nothing wrong with the Stomp and Escape, and I'm going to remove him now. If you just wanted him as your only T-Rex, and I have actually a new one that's unboxed that I had to have both of them because I actually love them both. If I could fuse them both, they'd be the perfect one to me. But this one, I think, really kind of takes the cake as the number one. And even though there's certain things I like about the Stomp and Escape a little better, if you only had to have one T-Rex in your collection, if you're one of those people who just buy all the T-Rexes, it doesn't matter. But if you only have one, there's certain things I like about the Stomp and Escape a little better. But the thing that I say with this one that, nudges it a little bit over the edge is that the little detail of like the tongue, it's a more matte finish, which makes the detail also a little more sharp. The detail's a little more sharp in it. I like this feature of the head. It just looks so much like it's alive when you do that. It's so cool. And it has the color. I'm not saying the colors are better, but the colors are more like the movie, the regular original Rexy T-Rex. So overall, I think this is one of the best, if not the best, if you just said I had to have one T-Rex, not including the Hammond Collection one, because even the Hammond Collection was great. I feel that this goes into a different category in the fact that if you just hate articulation, and I don't like articulation because a lot of people have the Hammond Collection T-Rex. When I bought this was the same time the Hammond T-Rex Collection T-Rex came out. I didn't want to go with that one because I love the ratcheting effect on the jaw of the Hammond T-Rex, because the Hammond Collection T-Rex, because I like the fact that it won't get loose because it has a ratcheting aspect to it. I hate the fact that all the joints, all the body twists and stuff like that, the body joints of the body, whatever the case is, all those articulations are going to get loose one day. Some people already have it happen now, and then they can't pose them. And if you're just a collector who just wants to see something posed, I've always hated when I was a little kid when you had action figures and the arms couldn't even pose anymore because it's so floppy that they're flopping around all over the place. So I'm talking to you, G.I. Joe. So yes, that's just how I feel. Everyone's opinion is different. But with that being said, I am going to end the review, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Oh, and one last detail. Link is inside the description below for you to purchase it on Amazon, where I purchased it. yeah, so if you want to purchase this figure and if it's still available, I'm sure time's running out on this because it's an older figure, purchase on Amazon. See you guys in the next video.